Amen. How many of us like movies? How many of us like suspense thrillers? Sorta? You get kind of scared, Vince? That's okay. That's between me and you. But there was a movie a while ago that I watched. It came out in 1999. There's a movie entitled Sixth Sense. Anybody like that movie? All right. And some people are thinking, we don't know what that is. It's okay. But I watched that movie for the first time, and I thought it was a good movie. But then after the movie was over, I saw the director's cut. And as they went through the director's cut, they were explaining all the different parts of the movie. And they were saying every time you see, it's 1999. If you haven't seen it, it's okay. I'm going to ruin it for you. But they said every time you saw red or you saw or it got cold, it was because there was dead people around. And I watched the whole movie and I missed all those things. So then when I went back and watched it again, I was like, how did I miss this? And did anyone else go through that too? All right. And I watched, I'm like, man, this is a great movie. And I missed so much. And even last night, we're watching the movie, The Book of Eli, my wife and I and my daughter. And at the end, it was like, and he was blind the whole movie. Sorry, I spoiled it. I'm so sorry. But look, it's an old movie. If you haven't seen it now, you're not going to see it, right? Yes, he was blind. I blew it. Just close your eyes when you watch it. You won't even know that he was blind. But I love those movies where it's like you're going through it. At the end, it's like, how did I miss that point? How did I miss it? But then I realized sometimes our spiritual life can be that way as well. That sometimes things, the Lord will provide these situations and these challenges or these trials. And, in the midst of it, it's like, I'm trying to teach you a lesson. I'm trying to teach you something. But then you kind of go through the whole situation. He's like, this is a moment I want to help you to grow. I want to help you to mature. I want you to help you to see me in a different way. But then kind of the situation ends, but you miss what God was trying to teach you or show you in that moment. But the great thing about God, he'll give you the same situation over again. He'll say, just go watch it again. I'm going to give you the same. You can't go back and do the same thing, but I'm going to give you the same situation over again with the hope that this time you'll learn the lesson. Raise your hand if you've had moments where you've gone through stuff and you didn't learn the lesson. And then the same situation came back again. You're like, why is this happening again? Because God is like, I got a lesson for you. You missed the red knob and the cold breath, but you're going to get it this time. And sometimes, God needs to do that to us and for us to help us to grow. And I think that's what we all want. We all want to grow. But not only that, we want, when we go through chapters in our lives, we want to figure out, God, what were you teaching me? What is it that that nugget that I was supposed to learn about you or myself or about or whatever around me so that I can continue to grow and be more like your son? And our text today, this is exactly what happened. And this is why I love the scriptures, because the followers of Christ, they just blow it all the time, and it gives me great hope. I know that don't sound good, but I'm like, I'm glad you blew it so that when I blow it, I can be like, well, they blew it too. That's weird to say, but it's so true. But how many times have the disciples just missed the lesson? They just missed the point. And Jesus, in all his grace, gives chance after chance so they can be in the situation, so they can learn the lessons that he wants them to learn. And today, no matter where you are, hopefully you'll have an opportunity to join a history of disciples who have gone through moments, missed the lesson. God gave them another chance. And sometimes it took a while, but when they got it, oh my goodness, did they grow? Did they flourish in their faith? And we're going to look at this. My title today is just Don't Miss the Point. Just a simple, don't miss the point. Don't miss the lesson. God is trying to teach you something. Keep our eyes open to hear it. So I'm going to read these two situations here. Maybe even as I read it, you're going to pick up. Maybe you'll pick up something that God was trying to teach them. And then I'm going to come back, make a few points, and then it'll be about 2:00. Mark chapter 6. Laugh now, you'll cry later. In verse 32, All right, now, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to pay attention here. If you got your phones, I don't have slides. I want you to look at your Bible, Mark chapter 6. I'm going to read this one, and then I'm going to read another one and see if you can see what's happening here. What are they missing? Verse 32 in chapter 6. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Now, by this time, it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. Here's what they say. I'm kind of giving you some key words here. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, you give them something to eat. And they said to Jesus, well, that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? And Jesus says, how many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they came back and said 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all, and they all ate and were what? And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. We read this story before, right? Right. So now after this amazing miracle of a little bit of fish, a little bit of bread, how many of you guys would forget this event? No, only Noah would. No, everybody else, right? I appreciate your honesty. But this is like a huge miracle right here. And then you keep reading in the next few chapters, Jesus has a confrontation with some of the Pharisees about what is clean and unclean. After that, he goes to a place, he goes to the Gentile region, and he goes and he meets a woman, a Gentile woman, and he helps and he heals her daughter. After that, while he's still in this Gentile community, he goes and heals a man that is blind and mute. And then in chapter 8, after leaving this place, this earlier miracle in Galilee, going through the Gentile community, now they come back, and guess what? Maybe they didn't get it. So Jesus says, let's recreate this scene again to see if your heart gets the point. Chapter 8, verse 1. During those days, another large crowd gathered, since they had nothing to eat. So Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on these people. They have already been with me for 3 days. And guess what? They have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a long distance. So his disciples remembered everything that happened just not too long ago. And they said, but where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. When he had taken the 7 loaves and given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people, and they did so. They had a few small fish as well. He gave thanks for them also and told the disciples to distribute them. The people ate and were what? Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. About 4,000 were present. After he had sent them away, he got into a boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. Now, 2 situations, almost the same thing, right? And you would think that even at the second situation, they would get it. Let's go down to verse 14. And the disciples had forgotten to bring bread except for 1 loaf they had with them in the boat. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed this with one another and said, it is because we have no bread. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many basketful of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketful of pieces did you pick up? 7. He said to them, do you still not get it? He said, I love this. Because this is me at times. Like, do you still not get it? And you would think that they would get the point. But I think we need this because sometimes we just don't get it. A few thoughts here that I think that Christ is trying to teach them, but I think also for us today. In chapter 8, one of the things I love about Jesus is that Jesus, he notices people who are hurting. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They've already been with me 3 days, and if I send them away, they'll collapse. And part of it is that they were with him for 3 days. They were just so moved by his teaching that you ever watch something or do something you just forget to eat? They were with him out in the wilderness for 3 days, and they would just listen to the teaching. After a while, I was like, wait a minute. Jesus realized if they go back, they'll collapse because they haven't eaten in 3 days, or they had a little bit, or they ran out of food. But I love that Jesus always notices people and he cares for them. And right here it says, I have compassion for them. The only time you'll read in the gospel where Jesus says, I have compassion. The writers will say Jesus had compassion, but Jesus says, my heart goes out to them. I have compassion on them. And it's amazing, just a side note, the only time that Jesus says he has compassion, it wasn't for his disciples. It wasn't for the Jews or his family. The only time you hear Jesus saying, I have compassion on them, is for the Gentile audience. Now hold on to that, because I think it's something that these disciples were missing. Because now they're in the place where the Jews, this predominantly Gentile area, where the Gentiles were considered unclean. So you can see between the first miracle and the other miracle, Jesus talks about clean and unclean. Then he heals a few people in the Gentile. I think there's a lesson here that he's trying to teach his disciples as well. So the first thought I had here when I thought about what is Jesus trying to teach them, I think one thing he's trying to teach them and us today is that they had selective compassion. They had selective compassion. In chapter 6, and it just took me just reading this over and over. In chapter 6, at the first miracle, I'm not sure if you picked this up, but it says that in verse 35, by this time it was late in the day, so the disciples came to him. This is a remote place, and it's getting very late. The Jews had only been with him for 1 day. They had been with him for 1 day, Christ teaching, and in this situation, the disciples initiated with Jesus. These people are surely hungry. They have nothing to eat. After 1 day, fast forward to the next miracle, they're with him for 3 days. But at no point in time do the disciples initiate with Jesus. This time, Jesus had to initiate with them that they're hungry and they need something to eat. And I believe that part of what he was trying to teach them is that, look, I'm the Messiah of all people. I'm the Savior of the entire world. And he's trying to get them to see, look, I care. My heart goes out for every single human being, clean or unclean, Jew or Gentile, male or female, that my heart goes out to all of them. But yet, for some reason, they could see their own people, we got to take care of them. But when it came to the Gentile world, for some reason, they didn't have that same compassion. I don't think they still got it, because in Acts chapter 10, the Lord had to visit Peter in another dream, even just to go to Cornelius' house. They needed to care for people and not be selective. What does that have to do with us today? Let me ask you a question: do you have selective compassion? Do we clearly see the needs physical and spiritual of some people, but yet we don't see them of other people. There's been a lot going on in the world recently. I mean, actually for a long time. But let me ask you this, and just kind of, I'm going to throw a few things out there, have you think I'm going to move on. Recently, there was a shooting in Buffalo. Did your hearts go out? But then there was also a shooting in Texas. Did your heart go out, or did your heart go out more for one than the other? Did you feel one because it felt personal, but the other one you didn't feel as much? Selective compassion. Did you feel the same way when people ran into the hospital in Tulsa, and people, do we pick and choose where we're going to let our heart feel things? Ukraine, people are dying. Russia, people are dying. But do you feel for those who are dying in Ukraine, but not those who are dying in Russia? You see what I'm saying? I just think sometimes, I think Jesus was like, I care about all of them. Every death is a soul. But I look at them thinking, man, if we're going to save a lost world, we can't have selective compassion. Do you share some, when we go out, do we share with some people and not others? I'll share with people who are my age, but I won't share with people who are older. I'll share with people who are Black because I can identify, but I won't share with someone who's white. Do we do that? Do we have selective compassion? You know, I'm reading this, I'm thinking like, man, I have to examine my heart. Are we welcoming to some, even the fellowship, but then we have judgment spirits to other people? Do we have selective compassion? I think Jesus is trying to teach them to deal with their biases and their prejudices. He's trying to get them to see all people the same way he sees all people. If we're going to be a people that bring the gospel to an entire world, we can't pick and choose who our hearts are going to go out to. We got to have a heart that loves all people, no matter where they're from, no matter what their background is, and no matter what choices they choose in their lives. But just a thought. Maybe that's a point that you guys already got that point, but that was just a thought that I got from there. Was that helpful at all? Maybe, maybe not. Just throwing a few things out there that convicted me as I went through this. The other thing is they had short-term faith. This story should have read differently. You know that, right? Chapter 8 should have read completely different. Jesus pulls up in chapter 8. Look at this. And I think in verse 1, it says, since they had nothing, it says, during those days, another large crowd came, since they had nothing to eat. Jesus called his disciples to them. Like, this is like, he's testing them. He's like, all right, we just got finished not too long ago with the feeding of the 5,000. Come on over here, Bartholomew, Andrew. Come on, everybody come together. All right, everyone's here. Okay, look, I have compassion on these people, just like I had compassion before. And he says twice, they've had nothing to eat. And he says it again, they've had nothing to eat. Wink, wink, right? I mean, it's like he's setting them up. He's like, you're going to get this point. And he's talking to them, and it's like, and all of a sudden, their response in verse 4, but where in this remote place can we get any food, any bread for them? And I'm thinking like, oh no. And I think Jesus is like, how many loaves of bread do you have? 7. Go get the 7. Let's do this again. But I think I read that. I'm like, come on, y'all. This is like here's what I thought. This is how the story should have read. Jesus comes up and he says, I've had compassion on them. They've had nothing to eat. And the way it should have read, he calls the disciples and they should have said, aha, we know what you're doing. We know what you're trying to get. Come on, we got this one. Are you going to do that little bread and fish thing that you always do, Jesus? Oh, we got this. Everybody gather around. You want to see this is the Savior. Gather around. He's about to multiply this thing. Check it out. Sit down. Just watch my Lord. That's how it should have gone. Right? We've been here before. We've seen this before. I got faith. I remember. sometimes, in spite of seeing the Lord work in the past, we're not sure he can handle the present. One of the challenges that we can face in new situations, we can just have this short-term faith, this forgetful faith, and just like the disciples, instead of remembering the past, they's like, but this is a remote place, and where can anyone get enough bread and food to eat? And I'm thinking, like, come on. But then I thought, I do this so much myself. I can't judge them. I do this all the time. I'm like, God can do supernatural things. I've seen God do things. I'm like, only God can do that. But then I enter in a situation. I'm like, man, now how's God going to do this? I'm thinking, man, what happened? Because sometimes we have a short-term faith. We can see God move here, but this situation, this is just too much. You think about all the amazing supernatural things that God has done in just take a step back, go down memory lane in your mind. Think about the stories. Think about the plantings. Think about the people that you've seen God change you're like, this person will never make it. You're thinking, God did that. Think about the things you prayed for, and you're thinking, only God can do that. And we have all these supernatural memories, but then something happens today, you're thinking, I don't know what God's gonna do. I don't know how this one's gonna work out. How many fish do you have? Here we go again. And then we tell ourselves all these excuses to justify faithlessness. Well, this situation is different. I mean, God could move, but this one right here, this is unique. And God is like, really? Is this unique? I laugh. I think back to Exodus. And I go back to Exodus. I'm thinking, God did the 10 plagues. I would love to have seen them somewhat from a distance. I'm not sure. I'm just being honest. I got a short-term faith. But all these amazing, and then they're at the Red Sea, and he's parting the sea, and it's like, whoa, and then he kills the enemy, dies, they're all safe, they're like, yay, and then they're like, man, we don't got nothing to drink. Where are we gonna get water from? We should have stayed. I'm like, he just parted the water. He can give you water. Short-term faith. Then it was a chapter ago, God. It was one chapter. Might even have been a day. He can give you water, trust me. He didn't bring you out here to die. Elijah. All the Baals and all the false prophets. Remember the stories, right? And he's out there and he's putting water on the sacrifice. The other people are cutting themselves. They're crying out to their God. Their God doesn't answer. And all of a sudden he says a prayer. Fire comes from heaven, licks everything up. And it was like, victory for God. Enemy 0, God 1. The next chapter, Isabel gonna get you, and Ahab, and he runs away. Short-term faith. I wonder sometimes if God is in heaven and he's talked to the angels, and Hebrews talks about the great cloud of witnesses and all the people of faith gathered around. He's watching and rooting for us. And then he says, there's Phil. Phil's about to go through a challenging situation. Watch everybody come around. Watch how he responds in faith. Because Phil's gone through many challenges and situations, and I want to watch him now. Everybody watch how he's going to respond with trust in me and love for me, and he will trust me in this situation. I've answered so many of his prayers. I've delivered in so many things. Watch. Oh, man. Phil trusted in himself. Didn't even look at me. He saw all the difficulties and turned to himself instead of us. It's okay. It's okay. Come back next week. I'm going to give him another challenge. You come on back. Come on back. Don't worry about it. That's my boy. I love him. He didn't do well on this one, but come back next week, and I got something for you. Here it is now. I showed him grace last time. So shorty, grace plus the miracles, plus everything I've done. He'll get it. Come on over. Gabriel, Michael, come on over. Here it comes. Here. Oh, Phil, not again. Jesus, you shorty. I'm the Lord. He'll get it. Just come back. That was chapter 3. Now we're in chapter 22. And I'm so grateful for God's grace and patience. Oh my goodness, I miss so many things, so many things. I'm like, man, thank you, God, for giving me another opportunity because you want me to get it. You want me to love you more. You want me to worship you differently. You want me to see people differently. You want to help me become more like your son. Unless I keep going through these things until I get the point, you'll keep going because you love me so much. How many times has the Lord come through for you? How many times has he moved a mountain for you? How many times has he brought you through your valley safely? How many times has he come through for you when you seemed that there was no way out? How many times have you still doubted him when the next trial came in your life? Oh, we are a people of little faith. How much better it would be if we could just trust him consistently, long term. You know, I know I've shared, I won't get into detail, but I'm going through some trials now. And I've been going through a few things with my health. Is it okay? Gone through they've trying to figure out some stuff for my stomach, have gone through 4 different procedures, and we'll figure out some more things next week. I don't know all the details yet, but I realized I'm like, I don't want to have a short-term faith. The same God who was active 2 months ago is the same God as my God today. And I've realized in a very real way, as I was reading this, I'm thinking, I want to have a long-term faith where God says, no matter what happens, Phil has faith in me. He doesn't forget past faith in present situations. Luke chapter 18, verse 8 says, however, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? In context, he was talking about a persistent widow, and she just didn't give up. She had a long-term faith. She just kept going. That's why I love studying the disciples, because they give me hope that even if you fail, God gives more opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. My encouragement for us today, as I'm not gonna go much longer, but my encouragement is to pray, to ask God to increase your faith. I want you to write that down. I want you to ask God, stretch my faith. Stretch my faith so that no matter what happens in life, my faith for you, it doesn't go up and down. It doesn't wane. Help me to have faith to see you in every trial, in every situation. Pray for God. God, stretch my faith. Help me to have a real, genuine faith that stands firm no matter the situation. The last thought here is when Jesus provides, satisfaction is guaranteed. When Jesus provides, satisfaction is guaranteed. Just as this is kind of just the last thought, as in both of these feedings, after Jesus performed his miracle, the Bible says in chapter 6, verse 42, they all ate and were satisfied. In chapter 8, verse 8, the people ate and were satisfied. And the word satisfies means they were full and they were fulfilled. One thing I love about Christ is that he did not just give enough. The Lord always gives in abundance. When God is in it, you will notice that there is always surplus. I read this just like, this was no little snack. He didn't give him a snack. He didn't give him a little baggie and say, go on your way. He did so much better. They ate and they were full. They were at a buffet. They must have felt they were like full. And each one, they were like, man, so full. He was like, I even give you leftovers. So if you need some on the road home, there's more to go home with you. 7 baskets one time, 12 baskets the other time, always more than enough. His power is never limited. He could have made just enough, but that's not how Jesus works. He's always giving you extra. And I think the lesson for us, as I read this, I'm thinking like, the lesson that his disciples needed to learn is in the first miracle, in verse 35. Make sure I'm in the right place. I'm not. It's a little bit earlier, where Jesus says, I am the bread of life. And I believe one of the things that he was trying to teach them is like, look, if you come to me, whoever comes to me, I will fill you up. If you come to me, I'll fill you up beyond what you could ever ask or imagine. Man, we go to so many other things to fill us up. And just, I'm going to shortcut here, just kind of move towards the end. But I think even through these last 2 years, I think sometimes we know that only Jesus can satisfy. We got that. But sometimes in the last 2 years, we were like, maybe Jesus isn't enough. Maybe I need to get more work. Maybe I need to do more things. Maybe I need to focus more on other things. And then why aren't I happy? Because we've turned to something else besides the bread of life, who guarantees satisfaction. When you're satisfied with something, you know what you do? You tell people about it. If you go to a nice restaurant and they serve good food, you send it out, hey, you got to go here. They give you pay $5 and they give you a lot of food. Man, I was hanging out with Israel. We went to, the taco place. I don't know the name, but just to let you know, I went back again and took my son. Where's Israel at? I saw him somewhere. There you go. I went again. I'm like, man, that was some good food. I mean, it's like taco. There's like all meat. Some people give you like lettuce and tomatoes and like a sprinkle meat, like sprinkles. But that place is off the chain. So I'm like, I was so satisfied, I'm taking other people. But that's how it is when you're satisfied by Christ. I want to share with other people. And when you read even before this, Jesus heals the deaf and mute man. He's like, shh, keep it to yourself. No, I'm satisfied. I'm sharing with other people. Only Christ can do that. Everything else will leave you empty and wanting more. What are you looking forward to this morning? Let me tell you, whether you've been a Christian or you're here for the first time, only Jesus can provide and give satisfaction guaranteed. He doesn't even just give salvation. He gives baskets full of love, baskets full of hope, baskets full of grace, baskets full of forgiveness. He said, I got so much more. And at the end of it, you get to be with me forever. He doesn't just take care of us, but he takes us there and beyond. Let us today get the point. Let us not miss Jesus in the midst of it all. Let us be a people who brings the bread of life to all the world, that we're not selective, but we have compassion on all. Let's get the point. Let's keep growing. Let's keep changing. And I'll call you.